It's a beautiful day for a podcast. The sun is shining all over the studio. Fans are streaming into the seats to witness what should be a fantastic afternoon of thrilling conversation. I mean, you can throw out the record books when these guys get together. It's always entertaining. It's always a little shock and awe. So batter up. We're ready to go on the latest episode of The Back Nine.
This is The Back Nine with Dennis Williams and Josh Mora.
Dennis, I felt the need to just dial in my inner cheese ball. We all know guys who talk like that.
Wow. In the dog days of summer with baseball, you just wanted
I want to lean in.
You want to try to be, was that Harry Carey? Were you trying to do a little?
It was a little Harry Carey. It was a little Brockmeyer, Jim Brockmeyer from the Hank Azaria show. I don't know if you ever saw that.
A little Major League,
little Bob Uecker.
Little Bob Uecker in there, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
You're blending them all together into.
It's an amalgam.
A cheese ball.
It is
a cheesy announcer voice.
That's well, listen, nobody has ever accused me of not being cheesy enough.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was some cheese.
Yeah.
But, it's perfect for our show.
Yeah. A rare foray into the meaningless and trivial. Speaking of meaningless and trivial, though, it's not really.
What?
You have a great shirt on, once again, in the tangerine that seems to be your color, and with the logo of your company, the older logo. Now, you guys have revamped, but talk me through that.
Yeah, it's just a shirt that got made for my golf tournament this summer, which I didn't do too well in the member guest out in California with my good friend, Johnny Schroer. We finished middle of the pack. Just my color and my logo, and we're always repping. We need more. By the way, we need more Back Nine podcast gear. We're way overdue for
it's on the way. It's on the way. We're gonna take care of that.
Right. You did get your Back Nine podcast tattoo, correct?
Yeah, but it's not in a place I can show on this podcast. Even for those of you who are listening, I'm not going to describe it. You have to know and you have to find out.
Only your lady has seen it. Let's just put it that way.
Sure. Enough with the silliness. We have a fantastic guest who is way above all this silly stuff that we're doing here. My friend Danny Heinsohn, I met, Danny, when did we meet? 9 years ago or so? 10 years ago, probably. We met at either a national sports forum or a sports business journal, because we both have a background in sports. I just came away from that first meeting so impressed with who you are and how you've built your life. So first of all, Danny, and for the audience, he's a motivational speaker and an author and just a great guy. So Danny, welcome to the Back Nine. And the opening question is, can you tell your story of how you arrive at this point in life? Because in many ways, to my perception, you're pretty fortunate to be at this point in life.
Yeah, no such thing as a bad day. And Thank you for having me on. And just for the record, I think that you and I either connected in 2013 or 2014 because the National Sports Forum was when I received the
One Man Award.
One Foundation Award. I was the inaugural recipient, which is an award in the sports industry to somebody who goes above and beyond in their 9-to-5 day job. And then you brought me on to speak to your students at Full Sail back then, later on in the year, after I published my book. And I spoke for the Baltimore Ravens Partner Summit that year, did my TED Talk, and just a lot of other crazy things happened after that. So that was 2014. So we're here 10 years later. So a lot of things have happened.
That's right. Well, take us through the beginning, because it was, late 90s, you graduated from college, not to date you, when life is all in front of you, and then suddenly, maybe it isn't.
Yeah. I had plans to backpack Europe with my best friends after college graduation of May of 1999, and was going to get a degree in electrical engineering and move to Arizona or Colorado to start my career as an electrical engineer and the world's most eligible bachelor. But a week before I graduated, I woke up with this intense migraine behind my left eyeball, and I'm 23 years old, and it's I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Every day I keep on waking up with the same headache. And so I made a couple appointments with a medical clinic and my family doctor, and they gave me the same spiel. Oh, it's probably a stress of finals. You're anxious to graduate, and you're excited to go to Europe. Here's a couple prescriptions. Symptoms continue. Call us back. So I had felt the best I had that Saturday, and Sunday I graduated with my Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering. Tuesday, I'm supposed to be on a plane to Bilbao, Spain, but Monday the headaches came back with a vengeance, and my dad and I went to the ER to figure out what was going on after CAT scan, chest x-ray, blood tests. I meet my dad back in the waiting room, and he says, Doesn't look like you're going to Europe. Doctors think you have a tumor. So that's kind of when that journey began. And so I had a craniotomy to remove this racquetball-sized tumor on the left side of my skull, and had back-to-back surgeries because the intracranial pressure is the reason why I ended up in the hospital anyway, because of the headaches, because my brain was swelling. So long story short, massive seizure complications. I had to relearn how to walk and talk and tie my shoes. After that episode, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. Most of that time was intensive care. And we still didn't have a confirmed diagnosis, although lymphoma was presumed to be the case. So my case was forwarded to UCLA, where I had a final craniotomy, and they actually replaced that part of my skull. They took out a baseball card out of my skull to access a tumor, and that had to be replaced with a prosthetic. And yeah, so I woke up and I felt great. And I like to think it was a nurse who took care of me because she was smoking hot. And then after brain surgery, you have to kind of standard protocol to let the brain heal. And then meanwhile, they had concluded that I had primary central nervous system lymphoma, a type of cancer that originates in the brain with a median survival rate of 5 years. So I ended up getting a referral from UCLA to a program in Portland, Oregon called the blood-brain barrier disruption, which is a form of chemotherapy to the brain that with hopes that radiation wouldn't have to be an option in the long run. And I was like, okay, we're signing up, whatever it takes, we're going to do it. And that's when my journey through chemotherapy began. Monthly visits to Portland, Oregon, 2 days of general anesthesia for the procedure, and finish up my last treatment in July of 2000. Obviously, I'm still on anti-seizure medications to this day, but that's a very minimal inconvenience for me because I live a pretty productive life now. But really, the turning point in my journey was actually when I finished chemotherapy. I was actually going to the gym during treatment, but when I finished chemotherapy, I jumped into a spinning class, indoor cycling choreographed to music. And I decided right then and there, in this new found life of mine, I wanted to become a spinning instructor. And then because I was still kind of dealing with recovering from treatment, working out was very therapeutic, not only for my body, but for my mind as well. I felt like anytime I was exercising or on that bike, I was distancing myself from the ordeal. So in June that year, 11 months into remission, I ended up joining America's most beautiful bike ride for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and had a little bit of fitness, but no way that I think I was ever conditioned to ride 72 miles around Lake Tahoe. And the cycling coach for Team in Training at the time, he said, you know what, you come down to the shop, we'll get you set up on a bike. You can ride as far as you want that day, but we want to help you out. So I get on this bike, and have you guys ever been to Tahoe?
Oh, yeah.
Tahoe?
Love Tahoe.
I never have.
Yeah, I've been there many times. I lived in Sacramento.
Emerald Bay?
So what's that? Yep. I know
Emerald Bay?
Of course. Yep.
So I got on this bike, and then to get up to Emerald Bay, it's a good, at least 1,000 feet of climbing. And I just remember the sunrise that morning. It was just like the most beautiful sight I've ever seen, especially coming out of this ordeal. And I knew the day had something special in store for me. And then we get to Emerald Bay, and then I get to the next aid station 25 miles in, and I'm just thinking to myself, well, if I'm 25 miles in, if I go back to the start line, I'm riding 50 miles. So I might as well try to get 36 miles into it and have no choice but to ride around the whole damn lake. Dan Brown was a cycling coach at the time, and he basically took me under his wing, and he coached me for that bike ride, despite not having to train for it. And there's a grade called Spooner Summit that you have to go up after you get to Sand Harbor's world-renowned beach if you've never been there, but it's all uphill. So I get to the top of Spooner Summit, and I'm thinking it's all downhill from here, but it's a lot of rolling hills. And then I remember we got to Zephyr Cove, and it's maybe about 5 or 6 miles to the finish. And I told Dan, man, I need a rest, man. I don't have any gas left in the tank. He's all, you know what? We're going to wait as long as we need to, but we're going to finish this ride. So he hung with me the whole time. And sent me off to the home stretch. And for me, it just ended up in a moment of rapture. I was crying. And
Yeah.
this was a year after Lance Armstrong won his first Tour de France. And, his journey meant a lot to me. So when he finished that bike ride, his first Tour de France win in 1999, that was right before I was diagnosed. But he says to the media, if you ever have a second chance in life to do anything, you have to go all the way. So when I finished that bike ride, my all the way was I was going to train for Team in Training. I'm going to raise all the money and I'm going to do the full 100 miles. So that became my mission from that point forward. And then that was really the turning point in my recovery. Now I had a much larger vision and mission.
We'll be right back. Listeners, I've been talking about Pete Learning for a few weeks now. Pete is an out-of-the-box training department that helps companies of all sizes reach their company training initiatives. So picture this. Your company leaders hold all kinds of institutional knowledge, but it takes time for them to create and manage the training that it takes to share that knowledge and other company objectives with their employees. And that's time away from what those leaders do best. That is where Pete comes in. Pete uses artificial intelligence, AI, to create robust, threaded training curriculum quickly and inexpensively. Put simply, Pete is an indispensable partner for any growing company. It is win-win at every level. So visit Pete Learning at pete.com. That is PETE.com.
Three Bridges is proud to be a sponsor of the Back Nine. My business partner and I founded the company in 2019 with the simple premise that we wanted to be the best storytellers for your brand. Let's be real here. We say bring your brand to life because if you don't have video, your brand is either dead or dying. We recently completed a project with a huge resort out in Colorado Springs called Garden of the Gods. We produced multiple videos that I am personally very proud of, and more importantly, they are thrilled with them. If you want to see our work, check out Three Bridges Consulting on our YouTube page. That's the number 3 Bridges Consulting on YouTube, and see how we can breathe life into your brand.
All right, back to the show.
So now you are 25 years removed from that, and you've had quite the journey. How has it always been this direction, this trajectory once you got through it? Have there been any bumps in the road since then? Tell us a little bit more about the journey since then.
Well, I would say it probably took I can't remember what year it was initially, but my last month of chemo was in July of 2000. I would say that I could probably claim total recall in the neurons reconnecting, finding neural pathways, probably about 2006 or 2007.
Wow.
And that moment was when I was in college. I went to a Tool concert at the Livestock Event Center, and you don't forget a Tool concert, but I forgot about that concert for 7 or 8 years. And my friend Nick, he was with me in the hospital. He's just trying to cheer me up and remind me of all the good times we had. And he's all, remember the Tool concert? I was like, no, I didn't remember until like 7 or 8 years later.
Wow.
And it just, all of a sudden, it just snapped back into place. And I remember it like it was yesterday.
So how much of that do you think is like the wellness part of what you were doing? Because, I mean, that's not from traditional medicine necessarily. It sounds to me like it's from all of the things you were doing to help your body, right? Like to push your body and do the biking and the physical fitness, the physical stretches of your body, those kinds of things. Almost sounds like that may have been a big factor in your rebuild.
100%. Like cycling was a cornerstone of my recovery, holistically, mentally, physically, spiritually, because anytime I was on that bike, riding a bike's like meditation. No matter how bad of a day I had, as long as I was on that bike, I felt like I was making progress.
We talk about that a lot on this show, meditation and moving meditation. I want to go back just a little bit. So many of us who get to this point in life, we're fortunate to be here, really. What is it like to be 23 years old and to learn at that young age, I can't take life for granted?
Well, when you come to that point, when you know there could be an expiration date on your life, like we don't know when our time's going to come, right? But when you know that, you see things through a different lens of life, and you just learn to live in the moment. day by day. And I think that was one of the many blessings that came out of this is I always ended up in a place of gratitude that even though I'm in this situation, I still have a choice in all this. You always have a choice with your attitude. You can choose your attitude no matter what kind of adversity you're going through. So I carry that forward with me to this day, like creating a nonprofit myself. I mean, gosh, how many starting a nonprofit from scratch, there's a lot of challenges involved with that and running a business or just starting a business. But you go back to your purpose on why you started, and that keeps you going.
Was that a big transition for you? Were you not like that before? Nobody's really truly like that at 23, right? Like that kind of perspective. It probably takes something like what you went through, but how big a jump was that? Were you the complete opposite before, or did you have some of that introspection and some of that thought process as in your early years?
Yeah, I felt I've always had that growing up. I went to youth group in middle school, and that probably had something to do with more of a spiritual foundation. But there's growing up in any community, there's always people there that there's maybe some bullying going on and maybe some systemic racism that you might not be aware of back then. And I don't think it was really not that bad, but like in hindsight, there was some of that stuff going on. And you try to protect your vulnerabilities, right? Especially when you're younger and you do whatever it takes to just defend who you are and whatever you are growing up or whatever you believe in. And that didn't really have much of an effect on me, but I would see just from a spiritual aspect before cancer, I felt that I've had that for a while.
You've talked a little bit about cycling, and I know because of conversations we've had and in your book, I've read you're underselling what you've accomplished in cycling. But you've also, as you said, you have the nonprofit, you wrote the book, and you're a motivational speaker. When you're addressing audiences, what is your purpose? What are you trying to get that audience to understand?
Well, I think first of all, it starts off with everybody's in these environments for whatever reason, for business, personal development, whatever. But I think accomplishing anything worthwhile starts with a moment of clarity. Like you have to be clear with what do you want to accomplish and why is that important for you? Because if you don't have, that's your foundation. Like if you don't have that mission, if you don't have that mission in a business, you don't have a business. So I think you have to be clear on what it is you want to accomplish, whether it's publishing a book, whether it's doing an Ironman triathlon, whether it's awarding $1 million in scholarships, like I'm trying to do for my foundation right now. And then once you figure out what that piece is, it's commitment. Okay. What's that metric that you're trying to achieve? Like what's revenue goal? How many lives impacted type of thing? What's the end game? So that's one of my keynotes is 3 disciplines of success: clarity, commitment. And the third discipline is community, because we can't do it alone. We need people. We need each other to succeed.
Yeah, we go through that a lot with the community. I was wondering, when you talk about the bike ride and seeing the sunrise and those kinds of moments that you have clarity, which is one of the things you said, do you encourage people to find those by staying present in the moment and noticing things around them spiritually? Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying? Like, did you find yourself noticing things that were right in front of you you might not have noticed before because you had that clarity and you were paying attention to signs and things around you, sort of the way the universe was speaking to you, if you will?
I think sometimes when you don't have it figured out, I think as long as you're clear on your intention, the law of attraction, I think you always have to be moving forward, whatever it is. Even if you can't figure it out, is putting yourself in environments that expose you to opportunities.
Danny, what's next for you? You've accomplished so much in the last 25 years, right, since you were diagnosed. What's next? You've got the nonprofit. Is there another book in you? What do you want to accomplish physically, athletically?
Yeah, well, I talked about this before this podcast because we are talking about the back 9 of life,
That's
right?
Yeah.
And so I'm 48 right now. And last year I was 47 years old. Well, at 47, I was exactly 23 years. So I was diagnosed at 23. Well, actually 46 was when I was twice my age since I was diagnosed, right? So 47 was 23 years remission. So I'm looking at age of 47. It's like, well, I've got a lot of good things going on for me. I've got this nonprofit. I'm healthy for everything that I've been through. So it's like, well, how do I live a productive life the second half of my life, even though I'm not as physically capable as I used to, I'm not as fast, but we gain wisdom, right? We gain wisdom through adversity and through experience. For me, I guess my legacy is that the foundation will be my legacy. So I'm looking at the next 15-year horizon to where we actually build $1 million within the foundation. That's just interest bearing. So we just take the interest of $1 million. That's $70,000 in scholarships right there. And the foundation could just live on its own through that. So that's what I'm building right now. Yes, I do have another book that's in the back burner of my mind about, okay, so I published in 2014 about this side of my journey, but one of my friends said, we all know Danny's story up until he published his book, but what has Danny been up to the last 10 years since he published his book? What are the lessons that he's learned? And so my 25th year remission is next year, and I'm planning to do 25 epic things next year. I'm going to be going to my first Major League Baseball game opening day. I was already invited by the Texas Rangers. I think I'm going to backpack Patagonia. I'm going to run 25 miles in my 25th year remission. But yeah, I mean, I obviously want to leave the world a better place than I found it. I'm really into like advocating environmental sustainability and people picking up their trash and respecting the environment. So I want to start building towards that.
I would say that's really a good lesson for all of us. That at the very least, you are the ultimate goal setter. That sounds to me like that's what you do. I mean, I know your 25th year is a big one and you have a lot of goals in the 25th year of remission, but it sounds like since this happened, it's just a series of goal setting and triumphs and victories for you.
You always have to have something to look forward to. And I think as you get older, you have to challenge your brain. You have to, I think the day you start learning, the day you retire is the day you start dying. And
that's so good.
Even though life gets hard, you got to choose your hard, because if you just sit down and watch TV all the time, I mean, that's going to catch up with you.
So Danny, if people want to read more details about your story, the book is still available, right? Can you tell us the name of the book, how they can get it, and the name of your foundation if they want to contribute?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually giving all my books can be received through a tax deductible donation to My Hometown Heroes of $50. I'll sign and mail the book to you. So you just go to myhometownheroes.org, click on the Fund a Future button, and make a $50 donation, and I'll send you a copy of the book.
And they'll get to know more about your foundation and contribute to the foundation at the same time.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, Danny, listen, your story is so inspirational. You inspire me every day. I mean, I think about you and your story all the time. And if you want anybody to join you on any one of the 25 epic things, maybe except running 25 miles. I run fast, not far. I don't want to run 25 miles, but all the other stuff I'm open to. So I'd love to, if you're accepting people to go along with you, let me know. I'd love to come along.
I will hit you up if I'm going to be in the Florida market for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll
join you. My friend, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, fellas.
Well, Dennis, I told you about his story, and I know there's some personal resonance for you as well. Just your impressions of meeting Danny for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to part of the story a little bit. His story is incredible because of the age he was and the triumphs he had to make. In some respects, you like to say that those things happen for a reason because they are so life-changing that if you embrace them the right way, like I've embraced my own journey, is that it can actually improve your life. You take it as, woe is me at first. You're like, why is this happening to me at this age or whatever age you are when you get a diagnosis of cancer or some sort of ailment that's going to pause your life for a bit. But at the end of the day, it's all about perspective and how you look at it and how you choose to take it. And I think he is an inspiration because he is doing what I've tried to do, which is basically make it so that it improves your life. If you can make it if you can put it in that perspective, that it actually makes your life. I think he can honestly look back and say, my life's better than it would have been had I not had this happen.
Yeah, I'm not sure that things happen for a reason, naturally. I think it is up to the individual, and you're kind of saying this, to make something purposeful out of it, right? It is, I'm going to make this be a reason. That's something that you can control. To your point, I can take a woe is me attitude and be a victim, or I can say, I'm going to do all of the things I possibly can in whatever time I have left. He's been very fortunate. He's had great doctors. His attitude, his moving meditations have clearly helped him. His holistic approach has clearly helped him. Whether he'd only been successful for 25 weeks or 25 days instead of 25 years, he's the kind of guy that was going to make an impact because he chose to make an impact for however long that was going to be. And I think that's really important. And it's something that we have talked about in different articulations in the show is you have the ability to control your attitude towards something. And that can make all the difference in the kind of things that come into your life.
I think what I'm going to take away from this is really simple. I think it's the goal setting. I don't know if I'll have 25 things, and I don't know that I think I always have goals. I don't know that I do the best job of articulating them, so I make them a challenge. There's certain things that I've added to my life that I'm doing, that I'm making. I'm a pretty rigid guy. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. So maybe that's my fear of saying I'm going to run 25 miles or something like that, because if I say I'm going to do it, it's going to happen. So I need to think more about that. I think my perspective on this is for me to think about some goal setting for the rest of this year and hitting those milestones and creating those things in my life that'll get me going even more in the morning.
And I think my big takeaway is, again, it's a theme we've talked about in a kind of a different way. We just never know what's around the corner. We don't know. So live the life you want to lead now. Make an impact now. There's no sense in waiting. He had that thrust upon him, and with great support from his community, he found clarity and he found purpose. And anybody who's sitting at home, for whatever reason, maybe they're sick, maybe they've lost or left a job, maybe they've lost or left a relationship. It may not be easy, but your way out is by leaning in, accepting, and determining, finding the clarity of what you want to do. And that's part of it, right? Finding it, doing some exploration, but getting out there and making that approach going forward.
I think that's the ultimate back nine summation of what we want to do. I mean, that's the mic drop on this show. And what we're trying to build here is have people pay attention day in and day out to what's the most important things in their life, because tomorrow's not promised. So live in the present.
Now, once again, his foundation, Danny Heinsohn's foundation, is myhometownheroes.org. That's where his current book is. He's writing a second one. And he was incredibly generous with his sentiments and his thoughts as he joined us here on The Back Nine. And we look forward to seeing you soon on another episode of The Back Nine. Hey, listeners, we just wanted to thank you for being a part of our community to date. We love the feedback you've given us to this point as we continue to build The Back Nine above and beyond what we're already doing.
Yeah, help us by following, subscribing, and or downloading and sharing with your friends and family as well. We have lots of plans for how we can continue to provide good perspective and fantastic resources for all of you. So join us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or your preferred platform, and know that we are incredibly grateful for your support.
Yeah, we are. We look forward to seeing you in person soon, hint, hint, and knowing that you're out there making the loop with us every week on The Back Nine. The Back Nine is hand-woven by Stella Mix Productions and recorded at Pixelworks Studios in Delray Beach, Florida.